This one video is designed to answer all of your questions. We're going to review the Razer Blade 17-inch. This is the Pro model, 19 and 2020 review models. We'll be covering design, we'll be talking about gaming, and we're going to open up the laptop, look inside, and see what it's like to upgrade this machine. So if you guys are interested, stick around and let's get into the review. If you guys do have questions about this machine, do not hesitate to leave a comment down below because I am answering all comments, so please comment below if you have a question. First thing you'll notice is that it does have a LED notification light, which is extremely annoying at night. I have a few things I don't like about it, which I'll mention. The overall texture and feel of the machine is a little bit gross. It starts to accumulate oils and skin. The rubber feet are nice and large. I do really like their new design for cooling. They have these two front little mini fans that draw air in, and then the ones at the top push the air out. So even though the overall design is appealing to the eye, the logo is really not my style. I gotta hand it to them. They found a way to make one of the most beautiful laptops look somewhat ugly with that logo. The machine has really sharp edges and it actually can cut into your skin, which I found to be really annoying. There's also a few points where you can pinch yourself, and the paint is really easy to chip on these sharp edges. I basically chipped it the first month I had it, and I actually take pretty good care of my devices, so it's kind of a shame that that happened. The notch that they have here for opening up the clamshell design is decent, but it doesn't always work, and it does sometimes hurt my finger, which is a pain. I think they'll get the notch right eventually. They're off to a good start, but it still kind of sucks and it still hurts your finger, which I really don't like. I'm looking forward to a design that doesn't have any kind of logos or text. I want just a plain laptop with no branding whatsoever. Okay, let's examine what kind of ports we have. We have an SD card slot, USB-C Thunderbolt combo, we have a USB 3.2, HDMI, and the Kensington lock. On the other side we have a power plug, Ethernet, two USBs 3.2, and a USB-C and an auxiliary jack. This machine does excel in gaming. It does have pretty good specs. You get a relatively large 17-inch display. It has really good colors, and got the 6-core CPU with 8GB VRAM, GTX 2070, which is pretty nice. I would say if you guys are trying to configure your machine, get the base model every time if you can, and then if you have an option to upgrade the screen, go ahead and upgrade that. Most of the video cards, the 2080, the 2070, and even the 2060 are all pretty much the same card. So if you want to save yourself some money, just grab the base model of any of the models that you're selecting, and they'll most likely perform quite well. Even the ones that have the 1650 GTX, they run quite well. You're really not running into too many problems. Even though they have 6GB of VRAM, they can still play just about anything. And then there's another model on some of their older ones, like a GTX 1050. That one doesn't always run games the best, but if you do find an older Razer Blade, that would be a decent one to consider because the price of it will probably be pretty cheap. You can probably pick one up for maybe $500 to $700 with a GTX 1050 or 1060. And so yeah, always consider refurbished or used because it's a great value. Just discovered a pretty funny thing. When you're all out of guns, your guy just like sticks his finger out. It's pretty funny. So here I'm pretty much at the very end of my journey. My car is hardly moving and I'm all out of weapons. So I'm running around. This guy just kind of startled me, so I decided, okay, I'm going to attack him. And then later on I end up killing him. While I was roaming, I saw two dudes that were having a battle. One of them had a crossbow, and so I snuck up on his side, got 2 good hits on him. He had quite a lot of decent stuff on him. I was pretty impressed. And then I started chasing this dude, but unfortunately this guy actually outsmarted me. He ran me towards a compound, And well, I saw that it said 29 minutes, and I'm like, okay, well, they're probably not going to shoot at me because the countdown timer has to go off. But I guess I got a range and then I got killed. And then he comes over and he grabs all my stuff. Oh man. Alright, let's talk about what it's like to upgrade this machine. So there are quite a few screws. You got 4 screws on the left, you got 4 on the right, and then you have 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. So the only thing that makes taking apart this machine kind of difficult is that you will most likely need a custom screwdriver or screw head, because it uses pentalobe screws, which most people don't really carry a screwdriver that works with those. Anyway, so I have an iFixit kit. It does come with all the different types of tools you may need. This particular one does come with the pentalobe, which is nice, which means I can take apart any electronic. That is one of the benefits of getting an iFixit kit. It does let you fix or take apart any electronic, which I really appreciate. I will have links in the description if you guys want to get yourself a kit just like that. Utilize the links to support the channel. The 2 fans that do act as an intake, they're quite nice. It does keep the device quite cool. And the star of the show really is this vapor chamber design. It works really well. It covers a lot of surface area. And if it wasn't for designs like this, we wouldn't be able to get laptops this thin. Gotta give these guys props for doing that. It looks good and it's functional. The other thing I really like is that all of the SSD and RAM modules are accessible. You can replace them, you can upgrade them if you'd like, and there's even an extra slot for an SSD. Alright, that's the SSD. Those are the RAM modules. We have a slot for an extra NVMe drive, and then we also have the 2 batteries. Definitely get the 15-inch if you like more battery. GPU heatsink, and there's a CPU heatsink. And again, those 2 intake air fans that keep the whole system cool. And I'll be showing you how to install a new SSD and also how to upgrade the RAM. That's coming up next. I actually upgraded it and put in 2 64 gig modules in there. Yeah, my system runs really well. And I will be upgrading the SSD very soon. I will be showing you guys how to replace the SSD and the RAM. That's coming up next. And then that's the Wi-Fi card. Those are the speakers. Okay, to upgrade your RAM, all you're going to do is locate these metallic arms that are holding in the RAM module, and you push them off to the side. Then the RAM stick will prop itself up diagonally. Sometimes you have to help it prop itself up, so you can give it a little push, and then you slowly wiggle it out and then pull it out. So when inserting the RAM, you definitely want to be careful to make sure that the notches are lined up. If you don't line up the notches, you can risk damaging the RAM slot or the RAM stick itself. As you can see, the notches are not lining up. So all we gotta do is flip over the RAM to insert it properly. What's funny is actually RAM upgrades on laptops are easier. Alright, this is our SSD. Be sure to remove the sticker from the little screw, or else it can damage your screwdriver. And once you remove the screw, you can pop up diagonally the SSD and then remove it diagonally. It is supposed to pop itself up, but if it doesn't, feel free to give it a little push upward and then slowly slide it out. And then when you're ready to insert it, again, make sure that the notch is lined up. And then over here we have a little thermal pad. That's to either keep it cool or to keep it positioned. I would most likely just leave that there. I wouldn't really mess with it if I were you. Alright, going ahead and inserting it and then putting the screw back in. And that's how you upgrade your SSD. So it turns out that the default SSD is pretty quick. We're getting about 2 gigabytes of read and write. However, I do feel like I need something a little larger, so I'll probably upgrade it to a 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte. Here's the old RAM module compared to the new RAM module. As you can see, the 64 gig one is substantially larger. Andobil, one of our sponsors, has provided us with a really awesome hub. This is the first hub that I've ever seen that has 4 USB ports, a USB-C for charging, transferring data. It also has HDMI with Ethernet, SD card slot, and a micro SD card slot. It's actually the most versatile hub I've ever seen. I've actually been trying to find a hub like this, but usually I'll find it either without the HDMI or it won't have the Ethernet, which is a huge bummer. But this is one of the first hubs that I've found that actually works quite well. I really appreciate that Andobil took the time to make a really high quality USB hub. It's quite nice to have if you guys are interested in getting a laptop or anything of those sorts. A hub will definitely be an important thing to add to your little carrying bag or carrying case, because there will be times where you'll want additional monitors. There will be times where you may need Ethernet. Maybe your laptop doesn't come with Ethernet. And then overall, you know, if you're a power user, you definitely are going to need some kind of hub. I would definitely consider this specific hub. Links will be in the description below. So this particular hub comes with 9 different plugs, and that is extremely rare to find hubs for this type of price range and this many ports. It's really, really impressive actually. So everything in this laptop is mostly metal. There are a few areas that do have quite a bit of plastic, like the hinge. That is one part of the machine that I really did not like, because if I drop it or if something falls on top of it, it could crack it. The hinge is also too stiff, and that actually makes it kind of hard to open up, and with that terrible little notch, it doesn't really work too well. I really wish they would loosen up the hinge a little bit to make it more easily accessible and easy to open up. These sides are really, really sharp. I've actually cut myself a little bit before on them, so be really careful around that. I'm really not sure why they've done that. Like I was saying earlier, the overall design is appealing. It is a beautiful looking machine. Here's what the power button looks like. It's recessed, and so it's kind of harder to push, but that's probably a good thing because you don't want to be pushing it too often. We got the speakers on the side, the trackpad on the bottom. The speakers, keyboard, and trackpad are probably the biggest disappointments with this machine, mostly because of the quality. So the trackpad is a decent size, but it doesn't really click very well. The keys are kind of small and they feel very plasticky and cheap. And the speakers, well, they actually crack and they have a weird type of fuzz sound that comes out of them every now and then. I'm really not sure why that is. That's probably a defect, but everything else seems to be operating just fine. Like these keys, they don't really have much travel. They are spaced out, but they are shrunken down a little bit, so they feel kind of small, and it doesn't really feel like the chiclet keyboards that I'm used to. It feels like something cheaper. It honestly feels like one of the cheapest keyboards I've interacted with. And some of my keys are actually defective and a little bit deformed, which I find very annoying, especially for a machine like this. I mean, you're paying a lot of money, and to get any kind of defects at all is pretty annoying. Sure, the quality might be worse. Of course, you can't really compare it to a MacBook, but it is close, but it just doesn't have the right type of level of quality. And when you're pushing the F keys, you gotta use the function button. I find that also annoying. The trackpad, the scrolling up and down is nice. The pinch to zoom is responsive. I do really appreciate that. And I think they have good drivers for that as well. But there is one thing I don't like about the trackpad, and that's it really doesn't let you click at the very top of the trackpad, and it doesn't have a proper click feel. So what do I mean by that? Well, there are certain keys that when you push them, they actually feel like they're supposed to, but most of the keys here, they just feel mushy, just like the trackpad. It feels kind of mushy, and there isn't much sturdiness to the click.
which is why I think it's time for them to get a new keyboard going. I think they've used this keyboard for a long time. Yes, it changes colors, it's got all that RGB stuff, but I mean, who really cares about that? I mean, yeah, it's cool, but oftentimes I just have to turn it down because it's kind of annoying and obtrusive. Really, we just have to see a laptop brand that doesn't really have a brand, that doesn't really have colorful keys, that isn't trying to be flashy. That's what we really need from a machine, but it's so hard to get these days. When you first interact with the trackpad, it's relatively pleasant because the mouse movement is smooth because you got a smooth screen. So because the screen is 144 Hertz, it aids in the fluidity of the movement, so that's nice. So a good screen plus a decent trackpad with drivers does make the tracking experience pretty nice, but I gotta hand it to them. They really ought to allow you to click at the very top and get like a mechanical click, not just a capacitive touch, because see, I can click at the bottom there, but I can't click at the top, and I find that really troublesome. I really wish you could. I think future versions solve that problem. So the actual panel itself is phenomenal. We got a 144 Hertz screen. It's OLED. It's got the Adobe RGB on there, so the colors look extremely accurate. So it is a phenomenal screen. But what I don't like about it is, why was it put into an area that has thin bezels on the side but not thin bezels at the top and bottom, especially the bottom. The bottom bezel is extremely thick and ugly. They really got to start utilizing that screen to space ratio better, because it just doesn't look right. It's a waste of space. They really ought to put a bigger panel in there. People will say that it's a dilemma because then the amount of pixels that the panel has will get screwed up and all that. But my answer is this: if some other company has found a way to do it, why can't Razer Blade find a way to do it either? You know, there is a possibility out there. There is a way to do it. They just have to find a way to do it. Stop making compromises and excuses and make a good device. The majority of Razer Blade owners will tell you that they are always off to a good start, but then there's some kind of defect, there's some kind of flaw in their machine, and then it becomes kind of an annoying thing, because it's like you have a premium device with certain cheap materials, a certain cheap feel to it. It just feels incomplete. I really want somebody out there to create a complete laptop design. Razer is almost there, but they need to up their quality. They need to up the manufacturing game and get rid of this cheap plasticness. I mean, they've already encapsulated the majority of the laptop full with metal, and then they choose to make the bezel around the screen plastic. Why did they do this? Why did they do this? I just don't think it would be worth it to do it this way. But, you know, every company starts somewhere, so I like the direction Razer Blade is heading, which is why I chose to get one of their machines.
Alright, so what do I really think about this machine? Well, I've had it for a little while now, and I feel like the battery life kind of suffers, but it is something to be expected on these 17-inch machines, although they did do a much better job cooling them this year around. I still felt like the quality control was not really there. I've been having some issues with the speakers on this device, which is kind of a pain. Sometimes they pop, and sometimes they just kind of sound distorted. I'm really not sure why. The trackpad is also kind of a disappointment in this machine. While it is a decent size, the way that it feels when you click isn't really nice. When you're clicking around, you can only usually click near the bottom portions of the trackpad, and you can't really click on the top portions, which I find really annoying. Overall, the gaming has been pleasant, but I think they really should give it a bigger battery and up the quality control a little bit, because the keyboard also has had a few issues. Two of my keys have slight indents in them, which is a real big shame, especially for an expensive machine like this. You're basically paying the same prices you would for a MacBook, but you're getting worse build quality with a better video card. Now, can you actually find something like the MacBook Pros that's gonna also game? Not really, that doesn't exist, but the Razer Blade Pro is really the closest thing to that. and that's why I chose this specific device. When I bought it, I instantly upgraded the RAM to 64 gigs because I knew I'd need it for my workflow. It's probably not a good idea for most people, but because I work with a lot of video files, the 64 gig is pretty useful, which I really like. Upgrading this machine is also fairly easy. It does have a little bit more screws than you'd expect, but at least everything is user accessible, which I really like. If you want to upgrade the RAM, you can certainly do that. If you want to add SSDs, go right ahead, insert it. It's not a problem. I am impressed with the vapor chamber cooling on this device. It's much more modern and it keeps the device cooled for much longer. So if you look at the previous devices, all you really had was just heat pipes with fans. Now with the vapor chamber, they can cover more surface area, and the nature of how these cooling chambers work is that essentially you have a cage with liquid that moves around. So the cold liquid falls to the bottom, hot liquid goes to the top, and so there's like this cooling circuitry effect where it's moving around and it just kind of stays cool for longer, which is nice. Thank you guys for watching, and if you haven't subscribed already, I highly recommend you do so because I am reviewing all laptops and I will be reviewing future tech like phones and other electronics in the future, so stick around if you do have an interest in these types of devices. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.